In this episode of Our Little World, we're going to learn why rain can cause big problems in cities and what we can do to help. But first, let's meet our team for today.
Hey, Sean, back in September, we filmed the entire second episode of our kids show using only 5 iPhones. And if you stop the video here, know that it went really well. We love how it turned out. The footage looks incredible. It handled some challenges that we didn't anticipate, much better than we could have otherwise. And in this video, I'm going to walk through the 5 things that surprised us by going really well, the 3 things that really annoyed us, especially in post-production, and the 1 thing during production that absolutely broke our hearts and made us change our plan for the day. But first, let's rewind. In 6 days, we're going to try to film the entire second episode of our kids show using only 5 iPhones. Tomorrow we film and we find out if this whole thing worked. It's December now, and we just published the second episode of our kids show, which we filmed back in September. And again, it went really well. We used only the iPhone, and we were really surprised. Save for the 1 drone shot, everything was shot on iPhone, including the time lapse. And if you want to help our show is an unfunded show. I've paid for the legal fees that we needed to get our contracts and stuff and the food on the day, but our entire crew volunteers their time. Our advisors and the teachers that help us design the show all volunteer their time. So if you want to help us, the biggest help is to go watch the show. I'll put the link to this episode in the description of this video, as well as if you really want to help, there's a 3-hour video of birds on a bird feeder that's related to our first episode that if you want to put that on and fall asleep, that's actually a huge help for us. 2 other disclaimers. I'm a big Apple fanboy. I admit that. I've been an Apple Final Cut Pro user for 20 years. And so I went into this eager, but let that eagerness show that my criticism means more, because I was really disappointed by something, and I felt led astray, and we were really hoping it would work, and it didn't. And lastly, we're not sponsored in any way by anyone. Man, I wish we were, but we're not. So our first episode we shot on a Red V-Raptor and 4 different Sony cameras, and that's what we're comparing everything to, really, because that's the kind of production we're used to. Those are the kind of cameras we use on most of our shoots, and so switching to iPhone was a challenge. But what we weren't trying to do was use the iPhone to trick the viewer into thinking it was cinematic. There's a lot of promos and stuff like that where it's the iPhone, but it's on a techno crane with a 50-person crew, and of course it looks gorgeous. That's not what we were trying to do here. We were trying to capture this documentary style that we do with this show in a really efficient way, and the iPhone was amazing at that, save for the annoyances and the heartbreak. But first, the good stuff. Everything was in focus. By contrast to the other cameras, even the tight shots, everything's in focus. And that's a symptom of the iPhone being having a deeper depth of focus where you don't get the blurry background. But it meant that all of our shots are in focus. And with the other episode, 20 to 30% of our shots, especially the long shots when someone moves, we're trying to find focus. And there's clips that we can't use because the cameras are in between focus or trying to find focus. So I was really happy that everything was in focus. The setup was super easy. We used small rig cages with a MagSafe attachments. We just popped the phones on there. We had Deity VMic D3 Pros on top of them, and that was it. And it was so easy. We didn't waste any time on setup. And that was a problem, especially with the Red and the easy rig we had for it. Switching setups and stuff and giving our operators a break took time. And the most precious resource that we have on set is our kids' attention span. And so any time that we spend doing technical stuff is time wasted. And the iPhone made us let us optimize the time we had with the kids with their full attention and full energy level. And that cannot be understated. We loved the 3 lenses. The 3 lenses, we used the iPhone 15 Pro. And with the 3 lenses, we got so much variety to our footage that we wouldn't have gotten if we had to switch lenses every time like we did on the Sony cameras and the Red camera, we used the Final Cut camera app. So we kept everything Apple, used the Final Cut camera app, and it was pretty easy to switch lenses and make sure that the shot looked good. We shot it in HDR, and I was surprised at how good it went, and it looked great on the screen. And for us being outside, shooting in HDR looked wonderful. We didn't use any ND filters or anything like that. We just shot with phones out there. And the HDR adjusted. We had kids in shadow that were stepping in and out next to this garage in the final segment. And the phones adjusted perfectly, instantly. And I know that that's possible with the Sonys and with real cameras, but it takes work to get that. And I've shot outside a bunch, and it's often a headache to get good looking footage outside with these other cameras. And you got to adjust constantly and feather your exposure and your ND. And the phones just made it look good. Yeah, the shutter speed's through the roof to stop things down, but it looks great. And we're really happy with how it turned out. And the last thing we really liked that surprised us was we had our kids shoot all the behind the scenes footage, and we wanted them to have the same camera that the grown-ups had. We didn't want like a junior rig for the kids. The whole philosophy of our show is that kids can do things, and we can all do things. We can learn and struggle, and if we work through it, we can do amazing, wonderful things. And so by having the kids use the iPhone as well, it wasn't like they were using a different rig from us. And our camera operators also talked about how nice it was to not have to worry about any technical issues. They could imagine a shot and just move the camera and do it without having to worry about settings or rigging something up to hold a camera. You could just hold your phone and get a great looking shot. So all in all, we love how it looked. It feels great. It let us do what we wanted to do really efficiently, and we learned a lot, and we really liked it. The three things that really annoyed me, and the one thing that broke my heart, are this. Number one, getting the footage off of the phones was more of a problem than I thought it would be. They advertised that the phones have like 10 gigabyte per second. We use the 15 Pro. I have also tested this with the 16 Pro, and it takes forever to get the footage off. Using the same cables that I use with my Samsung T7 hard drives and get way faster transfer speeds, I was shocked at how slowly stuff went. It took about 28 minutes to transfer 16 gigabytes of footage, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it made it so that we couldn't back up on the day because we couldn't take 2 hours to plug in all these phones and have them start these transfers. And so we weren't able to back up at all during the day. And that was a little nerve-wracking. We didn't lose any footage, but as producers, we like to back things up, and we just couldn't. Airdropping also wasn't working for us because it would re-timestamp all the files, so we would lose when they were actually recorded, which, because the phones don't do any time code, we were relying on that content created stamp to organize our footage afterwards. Because, second annoyance, you couldn't rename the files in camera. And so we had 5 iPhones, and so we have 5 IMG_0001, 5 different IMG0002. All the files are named the same. And if we could have named them A cam, B cam, C cam, and then the numbers, that would have been a huge help to us. But instead we had to import them, make sure they were kept separate, and then name them before we brought them into Final Cut, and then add camera names to them and change the file name. So it was just annoying, and the kind of thing where if they update the app to do custom names, everything's going to get easier. If they add time code in any meaningful way, that's going to make things way easier to sync. Because one of the phones was like 85 minutes off. When we sorted later, there was one camera which all of its footage said it happened an hour and 15 minutes later, or 25 minutes later, because we don't know. And all of the cameras were set to the same time. I mean, when you look at them, they all have the same time. It's not like off by an hour or two where it's a time zone glitch. It's like a weird thing, but there's no way to know that would happen except by recording, transferring via a cable so it doesn't overwrite the timestamp, and then checking again. And so it was just a cumbersome thing that made it tough to find the footage as quickly as we wanted to later, without having to do a bunch of extra work to either retime everything or label it differently. And lastly, I wish we could have switched cameras in the Final Cut camera app without stopping and starting recording, because that caused sync issues for us. Even if there'd be a blackout when you switch cameras, not being able to do that was annoying because it made us chop our clips into much smaller clips, which for syncing became a problem. And with some of our clips, it's glitchy where a lot of the clips, the audio starts like 1 second in, where like you can see the waveform, it's like nothing, and then the audio kicks on after a moment, which that's not a big deal because no one's talking right when we start rolling. But what was annoying is that the footage skipped in a lot of clips in like 3 or 4 seconds into the clip. And we did lose some footage where it's just a pan, but it jumps frames in there. And so we can't use that clip. And the way around this is, well, roll for 5 seconds and then start filming. But that seems like an annoying workaround, especially when you're doing this all day. And if every time you push record, you have to wait 5 seconds before you can really count on your footage, that's frustrating. And we ran into that a little bit when we got to post, and everything worked out, but it was just an annoyance and kind of that we did lose footage because of that. And lastly, the big heartbreak was we were so excited about live multicam, and we tested it like everyone else. And look on YouTube, and everyone's test of live multicam is the same. It's people pointing 4 cameras at their desk. I'm using live multicam right now. It's a handy little tool in this small little environment. And in the promos, they show this like climbing gym where there's a camera way at the top and somebody else holding a camera. There's one mounted on the wall. There's somebody shooting down from the ground. And there's a guy standing with an iPad. And they're like 15, 20 feet apart. I mean, they're up on the climbing wall. And it seems to be working great. And for us, that looked incredible because especially having no money, when we shoot this, we're relying on people to bring their gear. And no one had a bunch of wireless monitors, wireless transmitters, and then the monitors we would need. And so we couldn't tell what any of the footage looked like other than me walking around and looking over people's shoulders. And so I was really excited for this episode to have live multicam where I could just have my iPad and walk close to the crew. I didn't expect to be able to do it from a video village on the other side of the set. But even being within 10 feet, we could not get a stable connection. And it was really frustrating because we learned really quickly that we just had to abandon the idea of being able to monitor the footage. And that also includes like a backup of the proxy because it records a proxy during the live multicam onto the iPad, and then it transfers the full file when you stop recording. And we were really excited about that. That would have solved our DIT issues. That would have solved our issues for the director, and would have made sure that we wouldn't have to just be peeking over the shoulder of everybody. I was just really disappointed because we were so excited about that and it looked like it would work. And we used it for only one segment, the one segment where people are, it's just the host and the 2 kids sitting and interviewing John. We were all within 10 or 12 feet of each other and we used it. But even then, one of the cameras kept dropping the connection. No one was moving, nothing was happening. It was really frustrating and heartbreaking because we wanted to use that and it would have made a big difference and been really cool. And why this bothers me so much is because it has such potential to be incredible. And because it's not transparent, all they say is it works like AirDrop. You don't need to be on Wi-Fi is what it says. If they would instead say, but if you do use Wi-Fi, you'll have more range or, whatever these things may be, knowing that would have helped us troubleshoot where if the key is wherever we go do this, we just need to bring a router and plug in a router and connect all of them to that router, whether or not it even has internet, as long as they're on that network, then this technology can expand. That's incredible. Then we get 5 iPhones and a router and we've got this live multicam everywhere we go. That's awesome. And that would be amazing. But we don't know if that would work or not because we don't know how it works and there's no guidance on how to make it work better or how to troubleshoot it. It seems to either work or not work, and for us, it did not work. And zooming back out, after all of this, I'm so excited about this live multicam because it truly can be revolutionary. And like I said, I'm an Apple fanboy. I get that. But like what GarageBand did for musicians and how people can create music that wouldn't have been able to before without that technology and share it and innovate and collaborate in ways that they couldn't have imagined without that tool or without a bunch of other gear. This has that same potential. And our show is all about kids trying something, getting frustrated, learning from it, and iterating and conquering and succeeding in the face of all of this adversity. And we do that with the kids on camera, but we also do that as a crew. And that's why we produce a full behind the scenes segment for every episode, because we want our viewers to see that it's not just showing up and, hey, everything went well. We're solving problems. We're fixing things. But beyond that, the third layer is we want our viewers to also see that what we're doing isn't special. We are people who care about this. And with a couple of phones and some friends, we made something incredible. And you could too. And that's the takeaway that we want. But right now, it isn't quite that simple. And it'd be so cool if you could just say, yeah, borrow a couple iPhones and an iPad from your parents or whatever, and you can make a show. That would be awesome. And I think we're close. I just hope these little annoyances can get fixed. And I would love to know how live multicam works so that we can make it work better. Because lastly, in this whole video, we are committed to shooting our next episode using iPhones again. We're going to have to buy another 5 iPhones, which if you're just getting started out, buying 5 iPhones is still cheaper than buying 2 of any other camera for the most part, other than maybe like a GoPro or something. But if you're going to get like a mirrorless camera, those are like $3,500, $2,500 plus a lens on top of that. Getting a handful of iPhones is surprisingly cost effective, to my shock. But yeah, we're going to have to buy more iPhones to shoot another episode here in January. And so Apple, if you are watching this, we would love to borrow 5 iPhones from you if you've got a few laying around that you don't mind. And we'd love to work with you on providing feedback. We've filled out the form dozens of times, the feedback forms for Final Cut Camera. But yeah, we're happy to help in any way because we want to see this work because it can make a huge difference for people if it works like we all hope it does. That's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely appreciate it. If you have tried this, if you have any thoughts or suggestions, if you've got frustrations, questions, anything you've got, throw it in the comments and I will do my best to reach out as quickly as I can and answer those questions. If you made it this far in the video, I sincerely appreciate it. Have a great day or night or whatever, wherever. See you later. Bye.